Hi there, I'm Joby Soriano. We're so glad that you each made time to attend this series. Our desire is that this lesson would open your hearts and your minds to know about the signs of our times. I think the question in most of our minds is, are we really living in the end times? That question will be answered based on the facts that are surrounding us. You'll be exposed to the different signs and current events that are upon us today, and then you can make a decision for yourself if indeed we are living in the end times. Talk about signs. For most of us, we know that signs are there to warn us, to direct us, to inform us, and to instruct us. For example, how did you get to where you are today? What signs did you follow? Let me show you a few signs that are there to warn us. The first sign says, "Please do not sit on crocodile." Isn't that a good sign? How about this one? "Absolutely nothing next 22 miles. That's a great sign of warning. And this one, "Please don't throw your cigarette ends on the floor. The cockroaches are getting cancer." What about this? Is this confusing or what? "Entrance only, do not enter." What do they mean? And I like this one, "Toilet." Wow, that's a great warning sign. What do you think of those signs? Many signs may be confusing and incomprehensible. But if you think about it, those signs are really there to show us what's coming up ahead. If you think about it, if you see smoke, that tells us that fire may be on its way. If you see non-stop pouring rain, what's that a sign of? Especially if you see the water rising, it could be a sign that there is certain flood. Our confidence in future prophecies are based on fulfilled prophecies. Therefore, today as we study signs, the end times, we look at the times that we're in today, and that will give us signs of what is to come. In your booklets, look at that. Letter A. One example is that of the 4 kingdoms talked about in Daniel chapter 2 and 7. In the book of Daniel, there are prophecies about the kingdom of Babylon, which existed in his time. And it also talks about future kingdoms. These kingdoms did exist, and they conquered each other up until where we are today. In our next lesson, you will hear more detail about these kingdoms. In letter B, another example is the precise prophecy concerning when the Messiah would die. Again, in the book of Daniel, we're told that Israel would be given 490 years before the Messiah would come. The Bible then stated that 69 periods would happen before the Messiah would die. Now we know when this timetable started because in the book of Daniel, chapter 9, verse 25, it states, "Know and understand this. From the issuing of the decree to restore and rebuild Jerusalem until the Anointed One, the ruler, comes, there will be 7 sevens and 62 sevens." The prophet Nehemiah went to King Artaxerxes and requested that the walls of Jerusalem be built. He gave us his date. In Nehemiah chapter 2, verse 1, it states, "And it came about in the month Nisan, in the 20th year of King Artaxerxes." Based on those statements, we can put together a timeline as to when the Messiah would come and when the Messiah would die. From my notes, Sir Robert Anderson, the Assistant Commissioner of the Metropolitan Police at Scotland Yard, he devoted much of his time to investigating this precise prophecy. From his studies, he proved that from the time of King Artaxerxes issuing that decree until the time that Jesus came to Jerusalem and died, it was 173,880 days, which is 483 Jewish calendar years, which is precisely what the Bible said would happen. Now that's amazing. The disciples asked Jesus 3 questions that pertain to the signs or the events that would take place before his second coming. The questions were, tell us, when will these things happen? Number 2, what will be the sign of your coming? And number 3, what will be the sign of the end of the age? Now, the Bible is very clear that no one knows the day or the hour when Jesus Christ will come. So all those who speculate about the day and the time of his coming, you can be sure that they'll all be wrong. Now, although we don't know the exact date or hour, We can discern the future based on the signs today. Jesus warned us to keep watching and praying for his coming. He tells us in the book of Mark, chapter 13, verse 33, it says, "Be on guard, be alert. You do not know when that time will come." Jesus told his disciples about certain events that would happen before his coming. Now look at your booklets. There in number 1, it says the number 1 sign of the times is the rebirth of the nation Israel. Fill in that blank. The rebirth of the nation Israel. The Bible foretold that the Jewish people, the Jewish race, would be scattered all over the world, but in the latter days they would all be brought back into the land of Israel. Well, friends, that's exactly what happened. The rebirth of the nation Israel happened as an independent state in just one day, on May 14, 1948. That's when the United Nations voted Israel as a nation. And this is one of the most significant events that have ever happened in our world history. Number 2, rise of, you see your blank? Put there Russia. And its alignment with nations against Israel. Alignment with nations against Israel. That is a sign of our times. Prior to the 20th century, Magog, or Russia, was not an economic military world power. And in order for some of these events to occur, Russia has to be a strong power. The Bible also predicts in the book of Ezekiel chapter 38 and 39 that after Israel gets back together as a land, the land to the uppermost region, which is Russia, will align themselves with states like Persia, which is today Iran, Sudan, Ethiopia, and other Turkish states, and they will all go against Israel. Look what's happening today. Number 3, look in your booklets. The radical, and in the blank put increase of knowledge, and the other blank, ability to travel worldwide is a sign of the times. In the book of Daniel, chapter 12, verse 4, it says, "But as for you, Daniel, conceal these words and seal up the book until the end of time. Many will go back and forth, and knowledge will increase." Friends, Billy Graham says that more knowledge has been discovered in this last century than in all the centuries combined. About 90% of our engineers and scientists are living today in our time. Air travel, space travel, DNA research, human cloning, these are all samples of rapid increase of knowledge happening in our generation. Number 4, in that blank put there moral breakdown or godlessness. Godlessness. This is a sign of our times. In 2 Timothy chapter 3 verses 1 to 5 it says, "But realize this, that in the last days difficult times will come, for men will be lovers of self, lovers of money, boastful, arrogant, revilers, disobedient to parents, ungrateful, unholy, unloving, irreconcilable, malicious gossips, without self-control, brutal, haters of good, treacherous, reckless, conceited, lovers of pleasure rather than lovers of God, holding to a form of godliness, although they have denied its power. Avoid such men as these." Friends, as we look at our society today, we see that with the internet, with media, the influence of TV, movies, etc., all these spreading pornography and filth, it's ruining our society. Morality and integrity has crumbled. Self-centeredness and ungodliness is accepted. This is what's happening all over the world today. The breakdown of morality, ungodliness. Number 5, in that blank, put there, increase in wars, earthquakes, and pestilence. This is a sign of our times. In the book of Matthew chapter 24, Jesus said this, in verse 6 and 7, "And you will be hearing of wars and rumors of wars. See that you are not frightened, for those things must take place. But that is not yet the end. For nation will rise against nation, and kingdom against kingdom. And in various places there will be famines and earthquakes." Wars, rumors of wars. This is something you hear more frequently because of the widespread media coverage. You also have more people who've been killed in warfare today than any century that has passed. Devastation weapons of mass destruction, chemical, biological, nuclear, these are all now available. For the very first time in human history, we have invented weapons that can destroy ourselves. Famine. Famine is rampant in Africa, especially in Ethiopia and Sudan. Today, a huge number of our 5 billion population are undernourished because of the lack of food. Did you realize that in many regions as of 2009, there's an ongoing famine in many parts of our human population? Earthquakes. The number and intensity of earthquakes in this century are at a level higher than any other throughout our history. Let's look at this graph. This chart shows us that in this last century, the number of earthquakes in intensity 6 to 8 is much higher today than it's ever been in our history. Now the key here is that Jesus is saying that these are signs of the beginning of birth pangs. In other words, these events will be increasing in frequency and intensity as the time comes near for his second coming. We've all seen how we've gone from wars to world wars. We've seen how the weather is changing tremendously. We have mega storms, floods all over the world, changing climate. Likewise, there's diseases. There's Ebola, there's AIDS, the H1N1 virus, bird flu. These are happening worldwide. What's happening to our world? Number 6 in your booklets. The Bible also predicts that a world power will arise in the last days, and that will be the revived Roman Empire. In that blank, put there, the revived Roman Empire. For several thousand years, Rome has been fragmented into many nation states. And yet, here in the mid-90s, there is the formation of the European Union with its new currency called the euro. In Daniel chapter 2, we see King Nebuchadnezzar's image that shows the final kingdom that will arise in the last days. It describes the 10 toes mixed in with iron and clay. You see, friends, Roman Empire is represented by iron. So the final kingdom is that of iron and clay put together. The revival of the Roman Empire. What are the current events that we have? Number 7. Put in that blank, technology advanced. Technology advanced to allow predictions to be fulfilled precisely. In the book of Revelation, chapter 13, verse 16 and 17, it says there, "And he causes all, the small and the great, and the rich and the poor, and the free man and the slaves, to be given a mark on their right hand or on their forehead. And he provides that no one will be able to buy or to sell, except the one who has the mark, either the name of the beast or the number of his name." The mark of the beast on every human being in order for them to be tracked. Can you imagine that? The mark of the beast put on every human being in order for us to be tracked no matter what we do, where we go, what transaction we make. The worldwide system of computers will know exactly what's happening to us. Listen to this story. On May 10, 2002, just a few years ago, 3 members of a family in Florida became the first people to receive the Biochip Implant. The Jacobs family. Jeffrey, 48 years old, Leslie, 46 years old, and their son Derek, 14 years old. They had the devices implanted into them in a procedure that took less than 10 seconds. This was done in a clinic in Florida. Each device, made of silicon, called a Biochip, is a small radio transmitter about the size of a grain of rice that is injected under a person's skin. It transmits a unique personal ID wherever it goes within a few feet of a special receiver unit. Biochip's maker describes it as a miniaturized, implantable radio frequency identification device, or RFID. Sounds familiar, right? Yeah. That can be used in a variety of security, emergency, and healthcare applications. Think how close we are to that time of happening where everyone is given this mark of the beast. In the book of Revelation, chapter 11, it talks about 2 witnesses for God who were killed in Jerusalem, and their bodies are left on the streets, and the whole world will view this event. This was written in 99 AD, before satellites were ever invented. And think about it. Today, the whole world can view things instantly over TV. Remember the example of what happened at 9/11, the World Trade Center? The whole world viewed that event simultaneously. This is technology advanced. This is where we are today. Revelation chapter 11 verse 7 writes about this. It says, "Now, when they have finished their testimony, the beast that comes up from the abyss will attack them and overpower and kill them. Their bodies will lie in the street of the great city, which is figuratively called Sodom and Egypt, where also their Lord was crucified. For 3.5 days, men from every people, tribe, language, and nation will gaze on their bodies and refuse them burial. The inhabitants of the earth will gloat over them and will celebrate by sending each other gifts, because these two prophets had tormented those who live on the earth." Only now, our world has the capability of seeing one event that's taking place in one part of the world, and everyone is able to see it. This is technology advanced. And finally, number 8 in your booklets, that blank there, put gospel preached. Gospel preached throughout the world. Matthew 24:14, this is what it says. "And this gospel of the kingdom shall be preached in the whole world for a witness to all the nations, and then the end shall come." Today we have TV, we have radio, we have missionaries, we have Bibles sent all over the world. The gospel is indeed being spread throughout this entire world. In the book of Revelation, chapter 7 and chapter 12, we're told that 144,000 Jews will be sealed and protected during the time of the tribulation. They will be the ones to preach the gospel until Jesus Christ comes again. Okay, we've looked at the current events and the end time signs. The question for you is, are we really living in the end days? Only you can answer that. Let me leave you with a word of encouragement and hope. Don't live in fear. Don't live in panic. Don't be scared. Jesus told us to be ready. Are you ready? That's the real question. Are you ready? Are you ready if He comes tomorrow, next year, or anytime soon? Are you ready? You'll soon learn what to do to be ready. Friends, don't take life for granted. Now, go into the discussion questions and speak from your heart. I thank you so much for this privilege and honor to share this lesson with you. God bless you all. Thank you.